The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the drama playing out in real time in Tucson. The abduction of Nancy Guthrie, a case that has everyone wondering who is the man behind the mask? Was he working alone? Did he know Nancy? Here's the story. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished without a trace from her Catalina Foothills home, leaving a family and community in shock after she failed to appear at church and relatives discovered alarming signs inside her home. What began as a routine missing person report quickly turned into a full-scale criminal investigation, with authorities saying the evidence points to a chilling abduction rather than a voluntary disappearance. Surveillance footage captured a masked figure on her property in the dead of night, armed, carrying a backpack. Blood confirmed to be Nancy's was found on the scene. Mysterious ransom letters soon appeared, adding to the terror. The FBI has now joined the search alongside local investigators, and the case has captured the nation's attention, intensified by Nancy's connection to her daughter, Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. Who is the shadowy figure caught on camera? Are the ransom demands genuine? And with thousands of tips pouring in, which crucial clue could finally bring Nancy home? And I think to bring Nancy home, you need to find out where Nancy is, right? Now, all this took place in Pima County, Arizona, which is very close to the Mexican border. I want to bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas to talk about that. Cody, is Mexico in the mix here as a place where Nancy Guthrie could potentially be?
Well, the most recent update from the Pima County Sheriff's Department is that they are not confirming or releasing any details regarding if they are working alongside Mexican authorities, but we do know there's an alleged ransom note that points to Mexico as a possibility. Now, Vinnie, ransom notes, there's an extensive history of them here in this story so far since this story broke. Started with a note sent to media outlets demanding millions in Bitcoin. That note had a deadline. That deadline has since passed. Then an arrest was made of an imposter sending a note trying to take advantage of the situation here, take advantage of the Guthrie family's pain. Then another collection of notes from a person claiming to have information on whoever sent the first note. So here's what the FBI has said regarding these notes so far.
Regarding the ransom letter, we are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously. We are in communication with the family, and while we advise and recommend from a law enforcement perspective, any action taken on any ransom is ultimately decided by the family.
Now, Vinnie, TMZ has most recently received a note referencing Mexico. TMZ founder Harvey Levin said this on TMZ Live. Take a listen.
It says, I know what I saw 5 days ago south of the border, and I was told to shut up, so I know who he is, and that was definitely Nancy with them. He said there was a main person and there are others. He is saying that Nancy was taken to Mexico.
Now, TMZ has also put out a report, Vinnie, talking about the FBI working alongside Mexican authorities. They say, quote, law enforcement sources involved in the investigation tell us the FBI have contacted Mexican federal law enforcement to spread the word to various police agencies. We're told so far there have been no solid leads. Our sources say the FBI believes it's possible Nancy was taken across the border, but it's unlikely it happened directly after the kidnapping. Authorities have checked Border Patrol cameras and other electronic devices, and they came up dry. Savannah, reporting says the FBI is working alongside the Mexican authorities. Pima County Sheriff's Department says they're not releasing any information on whether they are doing the same thing, but it seems like Mexico is in play or in the mix here.
All right, Cody Thomas will be sticking around the whole hour. Thanks so much. That brings us to the first question in our investigation. Could Nancy Guthrie be in Mexico? Joining me, retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore and retired FBI special agent and professor of practice at the University of New Haven, Kenneth Gray. Great to see you both here. Before we answer the ultimate question of could she be there, thoughts about dealing with authorities down in Mexico. How does that relationship work? Is it a good working relationship? And would there be a level of cooperation or interest from federal authorities in Mexico on this? Stuart, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, because of the proximity to Mexico, that probably would have been one of the first things that was done, to reach out to the authorities there, to just, if nothing else, to be on the lookout, to be aware of the situation. And I don't know the exact level of cooperation, maybe between agencies down there, but that certainly would have been something that should have been done, very early on in this thing. I don't know if it was, and if this is something they're just talking about doing now. But absolutely, you need to reach out, because anything's possible at this point. We don't know where she is.
Kenneth Gray, let me ask you, does it create more complications in everything if, in fact, she's been taken out of the country?
Oh, absolutely, Vinny. If she's in Mexico and trying to locate her down in Mexico will be that much more difficult. Consider the fact that when the Bureau was trying to locate the top 10 fugitive they just recently captured, he was on the lam for at least 10 years when he was finally located. Relationships with Mexican government has improved over the recent year. Before, law enforcement was not doing a lot of cooperation with U.S. law enforcement as far as drug cases go. But during the last 6 months or so, they've started to cooperate a lot more. This very well could be Jalisco New Generation Cartel operating across the border, because they have a history of doing kidnappings.
Stuart, these days, obviously, a lot more attention is being paid to the border. But this is going in the other direction, right? This is going from the U.S. down to Mexico rather than Mexico up to the United States. What are your thoughts about transporting someone across the border going in that direction? Is that easy? Is that difficult? I'm wondering.
Well, again, I really, at this point, I guess really all we can do is speculate. So it just depends on the sophistication of this kidnapping operation. If we're talking that maybe it's a cartel situation, yes, it could be, could probably be relatively easy. It would be something that would have the resources to do, have maybe something that where they could hide her and get across the border, or is this just something where someone just took her out? One thing about being in Mexico is you avoid, the U.S. authorities, and it's more complicated, as Kenneth said. And, again, I'll just go back to, there's so many possibilities here. It's just hard to say.
So, Kenneth, in investigating this, right, and investigating whether or not they cross the border, you don't necessarily have a vehicle, but maybe they do have a vehicle. There's got to be cameras everywhere if they're going through a port of entry or a port of exit, whatever you want to call it. Would that be a more dangerous move, just going from country to country for these folks? Would it be easier to hide somewhere in Tucson, south of Tucson, in just a random home or warehouse or wherever, versus crossing a border that has like border agents, cameras, men and women with guns? I mean, I'm wondering if maybe they would sneak across the border in the other direction.
Vinny, there's years and years of experience of getting across the border, passing drugs across the border, passing people across the border. This is something that people know how to do this, that they've had a lot of experience doing it. And so if she were to have been brought to Mexico, things like cameras would not be any more of a concern at the border than they are anywhere in the United States, because we live in a surveillance society where cameras are absolutely everywhere. You see that the law enforcement focus in the neighborhood there around Nancy's home has been going door to door asking for Nest camera footage or Ring camera footage. So we have cameras everywhere, on homes, on stores, on stoplights, just about everywhere. And so the cameras at the border are just one more line of cameras, but you have to know what you're looking for. And so far, we don't have any details that they could focus in on and say, there goes that vehicle, because we don't have a vehicle.
Yeah, you would need to get the vehicle that was in the neighborhood at the time and have some way to identify that and have something. Because you're right, what are you looking for? I mean, who knows what you're looking for? So Stuart, here we are. It's more than 2 weeks. We're getting closer and closer to 3 weeks into this. What is your gut telling you, that this was a kidnapping for money or something else? And I don't know what that something else is, but like the obvious thing when someone is taken is a kidnapping for money. But here we are, and it's not playing out that way necessarily.
Yeah, I got to tell you, my gut is telling me this is not, a kidnap. If it was a kidnapping for money, and let's say that, those initial ransom notes was legitimate and the deadline's passed, if that's what it was, then the kidnappers might have decided it's just not worth it. And, unfortunately, we have to assume the worst in that case. But really, it's tough to say what this thing is, because it's just the unusual behavior of the man that was caught on the doorbell camera. When he approached that door, he didn't seem to have a worry in the world, really. Yeah, he goes and gets the plants there to put over the camera, but he was very comfortable approaching that door. And this thing is really, really turning funky, and my gut's telling me it's not a traditional kidnapping.
All right, Kenneth Gray, what happens here with the passage of time? Let's say there is no arrest, there is no great lead, and we're 3 months down the road, we're 6 months down the road. How much efforts will the FBI still be putting into this at that point?
Well, the number of personnel devoted to this are definitely going to start shrinking. I don't know if it's going to start shrinking this week or next month, but right now the Bureau has a lot of resources into this, and they're not the lead agency, nor do they have a case open on this. So resources will start being pared away, but nonetheless, they will continue working with the Pima County Sheriff's Office. It's just that it's going to be a much smaller footprint if it's not resolved within a couple of weeks.
All right. Big thanks, Kenneth Gray. Great to see you tonight. I know Stuart's going to stick around. Coming up next, is the kidnapping story in Savannah's book that she wrote just a coincidence?
But we just really don't have enough to say, this is our suspect, this is our guy, we know, or our gal. We just don't know that.
The Court TV podcast will return.
We still have hope. And we still believe, to whoever has her, it's never too late to do the right thing.
Savannah Guthrie, host of the Today Show, holding on to hope. Now, as I mentioned, as the host of the Today Show, in broadcasting, there's a lot of different kinds of jobs, but when you host one of the big morning shows, right, these are the biggest jobs in the business, but it's also much more personal, and who you are and your life becomes much more of an open book when you have a job like that, and it becomes, it's more about your personality and who you are, because you're waking up every morning with America, with millions and millions of people watching you who get to know you. And obviously there's a big upside to that, but as we see here, there's also a downside to that. I want to bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. And now folks are, and Savannah wrote this book back in 2024. A lot of people are talking about it because part of that book involves a story that she tells about kidnapping.
Yeah, Vinny, so this book was released 2 years ago. And to give it context, she talks about this game that she used to play as a kid with her cousin, a kidnapping game involving her mom, Nancy. Now, Megyn Kelly got a hold of this book and posted this clip to her Instagram and YouTube channel. Take a listen to this.
About once a year in the summertime, Cousin Terry orchestrated a kidnapping of my sister and me. We would all pile into her rickety station wagon and head north. Somewhere between Phoenix and Tucson, Terry would make a pit stop and let Annie and me call home at a payphone. Mom, Cousin Terry kidnapped us to take us to her house. My mother would feign shock, protest how terribly she would miss us, then assure us she'd drive up to retrieve us in a few days.
Now, at the time this book was released, this story was probably just taken as some innocent family game, but given the recent circumstances here with this big national story of her mother missing, it's a little weird, Vinny. It's a little weird.
It is. And, you know, the game itself sounded pretty fun and in its family fun. But it is unusual, right? This kidnapping game is a little bit different, which is why she put it in the book. But now her mom has apparently been kidnapped. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is the kidnapping story in Savannah's book just a coincidence in all this? Joining me to help answer this question, host of the podcast Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Tony Bruschi is with us, and nationally known psychotherapist, host of the Pivot with Dr. Robbie Ludwig on YouTube. Dr. Robbie Ludwig is with us. Dr. Robbie, what are your thoughts as you heard that? Is that just one of those strange coincidences? Could someone have heard this story and come up with an idea?
Well, it's certainly haunting. It's a haunting parallel narrative that we see with what Savannah talked about in her childhood and what is going on right now with Nancy. Having said that, it would be really irresponsible to say that one thing caused the other, unless it was some kind of person who was obsessed with Savannah and her story and somehow picked this kidnapping theme, and decided to reenact it. Having said that, I think that's unlikely as well. And what's probably more likely is we don't like when situations don't make sense, when there's an ongoing mystery. So we like to seek patterns as a way of trying to understand what's not understandable. And I think that's what's going on here. Maybe in some cases it might be magical thinking, and there's something called magical thinking connected to trauma, where a family might say, oh, if we didn't play that game, this wouldn't be happening to Nancy right now. But that's just a way for people to feel like they have control over a situation that's beyond their control.
Tony, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, reading that passage now in this context, it's haunting. I don't have another word for it either. There's no other word. A kidnapping scenario in Savannah's book, and now her mother is missing under these circumstances. It certainly lands differently than it did in 2024. But here's what I would caution. I completely agree there. There is something there. It's the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof effect is what it's called. And where once something is on your radar, you start kind of seeing it everywhere. We're all hyper aware right now of the kidnapping because of the case. So when we see the passage in her book, we hear about kidnapping standing out someplace, it feels significant. It jumps out. That said, and this is where it gets uncomfortable, we also cannot rule out some sort of fan involvement. The odds are not great there, but we don't know anything yet. If someone was obsessed with Savannah, obsessed with her work, obsessed enough to read her book multiple times, could that narrative have planted a seed? Could it have been some kind of twisted inspiration? I don't want to sound sensational or anything about it, but it's a question that investigators should be asking. Is it a coincidence? Probably. Does it feel like one? Absolutely not. And until we know more about who did this and why, I don't think we can fully close the door.
Yeah. And You know, like everything is a possibility right now, right? Some things are more probable than others, but even when you get there, I'm not convinced in what we're seeing and hearing. You know, something else about Savannah's very public life, you know, as a Today Show host, last year, at the end of the year, there was a story that they did where Savannah goes back to her hometown with her mom in Tucson. And it was a very public thing, right? Obviously, it's a public thing because it's on the Today Show, for goodness sake, for millions of people to see and understand. I wonder if that could have played into someone's mind coming up with the idea to take Nancy for whatever distorted reason they have here, Dr. Robbie.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's sad to say that, you know, when you are on the Today Show watched by millions of people, you don't know the psychological health of those people who are watching you. So maybe in some ways, Nancy became a target because they saw where she lived and they assumed maybe she was connected to money, or maybe they envied the situation that Savannah had with her mother. Clearly, it was a very close and loving relationship. So we do need to find out more, but we live in a world where people, you know, can twist things and conspiracy theories, and, you know, the wrong person watching something like this could do something potentially harmful.
And Tony, what are your thoughts on the connection here, right? The reason it's a big story initially is because of Savannah. Now it's a bigger story because we've gotten to know Nancy a lot better. But do you think whatever motivated this is connected to Savannah?
Is it a possibility? Yeah, anything is a possibility right now. Can anyone definitively say no? The one thing I would say about this, if it were a fan and a stalking type situation that built up to this, typically it's that. It is an escalation of some sort. So you would typically have some sort of evidence, some sort of trail leading up to an event like this, if it were to be that. But there are outliers in every sort of situation.
All right. Tony Bruschi's going to stick around. Dr. Robbie Ludwig, always great to see you and get your insight. Still
Great
to come, will the clothing lead to a suspect?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. With every new development, there's renewed hope that she will be found and renewed prayers that she will be alive. Here's the story. What should have been a quiet Sunday in Tucson quickly became a family's worst nightmare. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, was last seen late Saturday, January 31st, at her Catalina Foothills home. But when relatives checked in the next morning, she was gone, and something inside the house suggested danger. What began as a routine missing person report immediately turned urgent. Authorities declared the residence a crime scene, noting that the evidence strongly indicates Nancy did not leave on her own. Blood confirmed to be hers was discovered on the property, and investigators say both security cameras and her pacemaker's digital monitoring were disabled during the night she vanished. Now the FBI has stepped in and recovered images of a potential suspect, giving detectives new leads. With every passing hour, the search intensifies, and the nation watches anxiously for any sign of Nancy Guthrie's whereabouts. Think about what was recovered in this case. Video of the suspect on the porch, and not like grainy video, like crystal clear video of the suspect the night of the abduction. I want to bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Okay, I get it. He's wearing a mask. We can't see his face, so he hasn't been identified. But it is clear video, much clearer than what we usually deal with, right? Much clearer than the bridge guy as well in the Delphi case. So Let's talk about the clothing. What do we know about what the suspect was wearing, carrying that night?
Yeah, Vinny, the whole country has probably now seen that video, and we've broken that video down piece by piece to really get a better understanding of what we're dealing with here. And of course, we start with this image obtained by the New York Post of a glove that was found 2 miles away from Nancy's house. Now, this glove is significant because police say this glove resembles the gloves worn by the suspect in that video. Now, we also know this particular glove was sent off for DNA testing, and the DNA that was on it did not hit in the CODIS national database, which is interesting. Now, we also have the backpack Vinny, the suspect, was wearing, and authorities have identified it as an Ozark Trail backpack exclusively sold at Walmart, nowhere else. That's important to note. Investigators are, of course, working with Walmart as they follow leads in this story as well. Now, Vinny, let's take a look back at the initial video here. Now, as you see the suspect walk up, you might see something dangling from his waistband there. Well, that's a gun that he has dangling there. And we also know investigators are canvassing gun shops in the area as they continue to follow leads with that. We see it's a handgun. They are showing photos, videos with gun shop owners trying to see, you know, if anyone came in there and purchased a gun in recent days. So, Vinny, let's take a look back at the video again. Now, of course, we see him wearing a mask along with, you know, pants and a long sleeve shirt or jacket. Now, here's what the sheriff told CBS News about the suspect's clothing. It says, quote, Sheriff Chris Nanos of Pima County, Arizona, tells CBS News that investigators searching for Nancy Guthrie believe the clothing and face mask worn by the suspect in the chilling doorbell video released last week were purchased at Walmart. It remains unclear whether the items were bought online or in store in Arizona or elsewhere. Now, Vinny, we saw chatter online that the mask could be a HoboX brand mask, which is a mask also exclusively sold online through Walmart.com. So here's an image of the mask here, taken from Walmart.com. And Vinny, also important to note, I searched all around the internet and couldn't find this HoboX brand with any other retailer. Amazon, a Google search, you just couldn't find it anywhere. And if you compare it to the one in the video, one could say, yeah, oh, this looks like any old ski mask. But if you look closely, the rims lining the eye holes, the mouth hole, are what, to me, look a little bit more distinguishable. So, Vinny, that's all the stuff that he had on, you know, a couple of alleged Walmart exclusives. We'll see if that lead that they're following, that authorities are following with Walmart, leads to anything significant.
Yeah. He's got the mask on. You can see the eyes, you see a little bit of the mouth, maybe a mustache, maybe a little patch here, depending upon the angle that you're looking at. But it's important. It's part of the evidence in this case and brings us to the next question in our investigation. Will the clothing lead to a suspect? Still with me, retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore, and joining me, former homicide detective, host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough is with us. All right, Chris, I'll start with you on this. Let's talk about the clothing. Will it lead to a suspect? How would it lead to a suspect? What leads do you see as the most promising when it comes to the clothing?
You know, Vinny, I think, first of all, they're going to be able to identify pretty quickly if there's a point of sale, specifically if it's through Walmart, right? The FBI is the best in the world about, you know, chasing that type of stuff down. But however, one thing I think we should consider here that could be the downfall to this suspect is when he picked up that vegetation. I think there's another piece of this story that we need to be looking at. He cross-contaminated that vegetation to his clothing, and then that clothing went into the crime scene. We don't know if in the crime scene they found some of that vegetation. And if they did, if there's going to be ultimately a secondary crime scene, and, you know, let's say that clothing was still worn by that suspect and we find transfer on that victim, then they can connect that back to the house. As well as any gloves that he may have been wearing. So I think search warrants would be executed simultaneously while they're looking for the point of sale on particular residents, specifically looking for the clothing that he's wearing that evening, not just the clothing that he bought.
All right, Stuart Fillmore, what are your thoughts here about everything that he's got on him? The clothes, the backpack, the gun, the gloves, the mask. Do you think that is what will lead to a suspect here? And if so, which do you think are the most promising?
Well, absolutely, Vinny. I mean, this is lead information. It's what you have to have in an investigation are these type things. Although I will say, years ago, I had a case, tried to identify a suspect in a point-of-sale transaction at Walmart, and it was several months after the crime, and I didn't have any luck in doing that. So, depending on maybe how far back this person bought all this gear at Walmart, and possibly in a point-of-sale transaction at the store. I forget now how long they said they kept their footage, and that might have just been this particular store. Technology has greatly advanced since then. So it's absolutely important. This is something you have to run down. Hopefully, maybe they've already identified somebody and that, they're working on stuff that we don't know about, but it is absolutely important and crucial.
Chris, what does your gut tell you about the things that he's wearing? The gloves, the mask, the backpack. Do you think these are things that were purchased just for this job? Or, if you go to my house, I have a mask. It's an old wrestling mask, but I have a mask. I've got lots of gloves. I've got backpacks. Do you think it was stuff that the man on the porch already had or purchased just to do what he did?
Vinny, it's interesting because it looks like he's almost gone overboard to kind of assemble, this type of gear to go into this situation. But he was successful. Obviously, Miss Guthrie is missing. But it tells me that this guy is extremely comfortable in this particular environment. He's also taken some time, to buy the things that would conceal his identity, which could also project that he may have an association and could be recognized by the potential victim. One other thing to consider, if they ever did find clothing, on every tag, if an item is brought in from overseas, is what they call an RN number. It's a Federal Trade Commission number that you can trace just about where the distribution points, and you can go all the way back to the factory, the date and the time when that item was manufactured. And I had a case many years ago where we did that, and we went to a cash register and pulled those receipts.
Wow. So, Stuart, when working with an organization like Walmart, how much help do you receive? How much of the time going into looking through records, looking through potential videos from the stores, et cetera, is done by the FBI versus like Walmart themselves and their internal teams?
Yeah, I think Walmart has an excellent internal team. Their security folks are top notch. The couple of times that I dealt with them directly on cases, the cooperation was absolute. There was no question about it. They were very helpful. Unfortunately, like I said, on that one case, I was just too late. But it's hard to say exactly, how they're working together. But there's just no question that Walmart's going to do everything they can to help out on this.
And that's good. I mean, big companies like that, they keep the records. And I know there's, sometimes we say, oh, we have no privacy. But, on the other side of that is a situation like this. We're trying to save a life, solve a crime. Those cameras that are everywhere are helping us out. Stuart Fillmore, always great to have you. Chris is going to stick around. Coming up next, should the reward be higher?
This entire team here, those behind me, and our community are hurting with you.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement.
And tens of thousands of people have. And people respond to a situation like this. And obviously the people in that neighborhood, people in Tucson, people in Arizona, people around the country want to help. They want to do anything and everything that they can. And as I said, tens of thousands of tips have come in. But there are some people who are much closer to this situation who absolutely know what's going on here. I believe those are the ones you got to kind of shake to come forward and provide the information. Girlfriends, boyfriends, parents, siblings, friends who may know, oh, someone's involved. I want to bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. People like that might not necessarily be motivated by just doing the right thing. So what is the status of the reward in this case right now?
Well, we know the reward is out there and it's been increased a couple of times, but here was the initial announcement of the reward from the FBI. Take a listen.
The FBI is now working this case jointly with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and we're going to start today by announcing a $50,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie and or the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance. And this will be the missing persons with the reward that will be going out.
So since then, that reward has now increased. Well, it increased to $100,000, and now most recently it's at $102,500, thanks to a donor contributing to the investigation. But Vinny, there's an attorney in Milwaukee who's also the president of Milwaukee Crime Stoppers, and he's putting up $100,000 through the Milwaukee Crime Stoppers organization to try to incentivize somebody to come forward with information in this story. Take a listen to what he told Fox 6 in Milwaukee.
She's an 84-year-old woman, and I don't like the way the investigation and the reward is being handled. I think it could have been done much better. I think if the $100,000 was put up through Crime Stoppers, we could be further along.
So between the FBI and now this attorney in Milwaukee, there's just a little bit more than $200,000 of reward money out there. Hopefully this will incentivize somebody with some form of information to come forward.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is 2026, right? It's 2026. 100,000 is a lot of money. 200,000 is a lot of money. But in ways...
Not life-changing.
It's not life-changing, exactly. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Should the reward be higher? Should it be a number that, you know what, even if it is my best friend, even if it is my brother or my sister, I'm going to make the call. I'm going to get the money. Still with me. Retired FBI. Nope. Still with me. It's Chris McDonough. And Tony Bruschi. All right. All right. Let me start with you, Tony. What do you think? Should this be a higher number? This is a high-profile case. This is a big one. I just always felt like there was going to be a big number thrown at this one that would make anybody come forward. Like $1 million? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when it comes to a life, there really never is an amount of money that is going to be too high. The big question is whether it moves anyone to talk, and that depends on leakage. Did this person tell someone? Did they brag? Did they slip up? If anyone out there knows something, a bigger number could tip the scales. But even more important, if the person with information is close enough to know details, they're also probably close enough to be at risk, too. And we have to acknowledge snitching, even in a case this heartbreaking involving an 84-year-old woman, is not only frowned upon, it's dangerous. So the reward has to be life-changing. Your exact words, completely spot on. Money that says you can relocate, you can take care of your family, you can go somewhere safe, because the person sitting on information might have kids, might have people depending on them. They're weighing their safety and well-being against doing the right thing right now. So yes, raise the reward, but make it meaningful enough that someone can upend their entire life to come forward.
What do you think, Chris? Should it be higher? Is there a downside to it that I'm not thinking about here?
I have mixed feelings about rewards, right? I mean, having spent my career in San Diego County right there on the border and 13 years in homicide, well, not once had we ever paid out a reward. And the risk is if this thing goes international, they don't have the Constitution down there. And you could get a cast of characters that says $200,000, I'm going to find her. And they're not only going to find her, they're going to find everybody that's connected with her and their families. And so it does become a risk if this thing goes, potentially across the border. In fact, we used a reward one time to actually get a guy to turn himself back in at San Ysidro because we told him we were going to tell the authorities down there that there was $10,000 on his head.
Oh, wow. It's Tony, I don't know if you remember this movie, Mel Gibson, Ransom, where he basically, instead of paying the ransom, he put the money out on the head of the person who took his child and kind of flipped its, can't do that in this case, but the reward sort of does that to a certain extent, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you are reaching, obviously, the person who did this is not going to cash in on their own reward. It's trying to flip the script. It's trying to reach the people that can inspire that person to do the right thing, or if they need to step up and do the right thing, to make that person known. And that's where the reward does come into play. But you make a lot of great points there. There is certainly downsides to everything. In this case, if there is no upsides, it feels right now. There's seemingly almost all downsides. So it's pulling what lever at what time, that's anyone's best guess, while everyone tries to figure out the path to get Nancy back.
Chris, we have about 25 seconds left here. Who is most likely to come forward? And I'm talking about people that have like real information, not just I saw something, but someone who has some information. What type of person is most likely?
Well, if this is somebody that's known to the house, hypothetically, a pool guy or whatever it's going to be one of those distance type of leakage that Tony was talking about that's going to pop in and say, hey, here there's a reward, can we talk?
Yeah. All right. Big thanks to Tony Bruschi, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, and of course, Chris McDonough, The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Great episode last Sunday, by the way. Unbelievable.
You're the best, Vinny.
Fantastic.
You're the best.
You guys are. All right. Thank you both. Money matters. Thieves, robbers, and kidnappers love money. At the end of the day, many of them think that money will solve their problems. That's why I love the idea of turning it on its head. Throw out a huge reward to solve the case. Whoever these lowlives are, I'm sure someone in their lives would love $1 million a lot more than their friendship with the lowlife kidnapper. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.